I'm Abby, I'm your host, and today we're talking about those people. Those mean people that wish bad things into our lives. While we try to avoid them, we don't always know what to do with them. So today we're talking about mean people and what to do about them. And so if you know any mean people, stick around. Now before we jump into all of that, we'd love to hear from you. The best way to do this is to scan the QR code, take a minute, tell us about yourself. If it's your first time with us, let us know that and we'll have a gift headed your way this week. As you're doing that, we want to make sure you know that next weekend Crosspoint is going to be online only. July 4th and 7th will be online only as a way to show our appreciation to the incredible volunteers, staff, and leaders who work so hard each Thursday and Sunday to make this an amazing place week in and week out. Therefore, we'll not be hosting in-person services for children, students, or adults over the Independence Day weekend. So we hope you enjoy the holiday weekend. Tune in from wherever you're celebrating at crosspointweb.org/watch, as we're going to have an amazing service and speaker that you are not going to want to miss as we kick off the summer series, Spark. Now, a couple of ways to connect outside of the weekend service that I want to tell you about. First, we've got a really cool opportunity to do some good in our community by helping students go back to school in style this fall through a new partnership with one of our local schools. There's two ways that you can participate. You can either stop by the Crosspoint Commons to pick up a shopping tag with these individual back to school clothing items, or if you'd rather make a donation and let us do the shopping, just hit this QR code, make a donation, choose the designation Back to School in Style, and we'll do the shopping for you. Check it out today, anytime between now and July 14th. Next, we've got another carpool cinema headed your way on Friday, July 12th for the amazing film Top Gun Maverick drive-in movie style. This is a free event. It's also a great opportunity to invite someone to join you at our campus. So invite some friends, bring your people, come early, tailgate, bike, skate, drive, even walk over. Let's make a night of it. Be sure to let us and your friends know that you're coming on our Facebook event. The lot opens at 8 and its movie starts at dusk. Last, the Crosspoint Investment Group went public this past week. If you're interested in finding more about how you can participate in the Crosspoint Investment Group, how you can do good with your money, plus receive a good dividend return, plus help move the kingdom forward by strengthening Crosspoint's future, let us know at this QR code or on your connection card, and we'll get you in that communication loop this week. All right, we've got a great service today. Do you know any mean people? Have you ever tried to get even with someone who's mean only to discover that you're being mean too? You're becoming just like someone you don't even like. Well, there is a better way, and that's what we're talking about today. So to get us headed in that direction, let's head to the venue.
'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. You know it used to be mad love. So take a look what you've done. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. Hey, now we got problems, and I don't think we can solve them. You made a really deep cut. And baby, now we got bad blood. Hey, did you have to do this? I was thinking that you could be trusted. Did you have to ruin what was shiny? Now
I tell you what, really excited about this series, part 2 we're digging into today, how to deal with mean people. And what do you do when you're dealing with people and there is bad blood between you and between them? And so welcome to Crosspoint. My name's Curt. And if you are here for the first time, really excited you're here with us this weekend. And we got a whole bunch of people tuning in online. Let's share some love with those in our online space this weekend. Man, so excited to have you joining us on the other side of the screen. Now, we want you to know that we know as we're talking about the mean people in our lives that, and I hope this isn't the case, that it's possible that somebody might hear this message and you might come to mind, all right? And I hope that's not the case, or I might come to mind. And so, we've all had moments in our lives where we have actually been the ones that are the mean people. And, most of the time when we get together in this space, we're actually talking about how do we not be that kind of person? How do we not be the mean person in other people's lives? But this series is specifically about how do we respond to the mean people? What do we do with them? How do we handle them as we interact with them? And so when we're talking mean people, we're talking about people who are deceptive, people who, are controlling and unkind and unpredictable and manipulative. And you see them coming when, you're walking up the sidewalk and you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't want to interact with them. They are so mean. Every time I interact with them, there's just no way to, say it any differently. And so it's important to talk about this because we have to think through how we're going to respond. Because, if you don't have a plan and you're not proactive on this, then, certain things are going to just not go well. And you've experienced this before, because what generally happens is the mean people in our lives end up gaining a measure of control over us. And, before we know it, we're like behaving just like them and we're being mean right back at them. And it oftentimes just feels like we don't have any choice. Now, if you don't know what that looks like, you're like, well, I just don't know if one person can affect the other. Then let me just give you a little example. This is probably one of America's favorite movie moments on two mean people that interacting and how one influences the other. Here's a little moment from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Oh, perhaps we've been there on either side of that. I told you the first part of a story last weekend about a moment when our family was out on the West Coast and we were traveling and we spent 4 days at Yosemite camping. And for some of us, it's really exciting. Some of our family didn't like it so much. But, we slept in a tent and we ate around, fire and cooked on the fire. And we, pretty much were outside all the time. And we smelled like smoke. Everything smelled like smoke. So when we went back to the city, that, we checked into a hotel and everybody's looking for, a hot shower and a good bed for the night. We got there about 10 o'clock at night. And as we, checked in, we had no problem. We got to our room, put our luggage up there, and then we went back down to get our second set of luggage. And when we took that up to our room, we tried to get in our room, and, the key card opened the door, but it only opened about 2 inches because somehow that little, flap, that little safety bar that, goes over the door when you're inside to, keep people out, somehow when the door shut, that thing just swung over and locked the door from the inside. And so if you were here last week and you heard a bit of this story, I'm going to share just a couple of the details here. And so we were stuck, and our stuff's on the other side of that door, and we can't get to it, and there's no way to get in the room. I mean, it's made to be that way. And so, went down to talk to the manager, and he kind of acted like that lady right there. He didn't really pay attention to the fact that we were kind of in distress, and he's like, well, sir, you're going to have to wait. And I'm like, hey, my whole family, I got 6 of us up in the hallway. We look homeless. We got all these bags that have, clothes, and it smells like smoke. And he just kind of kept blowing me off and then laughed at me. And he said, sir, I think this is like an operator error. You obviously don't know how to work the door. And I just felt like he was being really mean. And so, we kind of went back and forth, and my attitude kind of went downhill. He said, hey, go back to the room. We'll be up shortly to get you in the room. Went back up after 15 minutes, 20 minutes, never showed up. So I'm getting agitated. I go back down to talk to him again. He's agitated. Eventually they put us in another room, and kind of to make a long story short, we're sitting in that room waiting for someone to come open the door now for, hour and a half, 2 hours, because we can't do anything and we're stuck. We can't leave the hotel because our luggage is in the room, and, we can't get showers. We can't do anything. It's after midnight now. Everybody's grumpy. And this is so embarrassing, but as we're sitting in the room, it just spiraled down. I mean, this guy was pretty mean to us, and all of a sudden, we're just sitting there thinking of some of the most manipulative, destructive ways we could get back at this manager. Like, how could we get him fired? And what emails could we send? And we could add this in, and they would let him go right away. I mean, it was embarrassing to think where our minds go. The point being this, it is so difficult to be good to people who aren't good. It's difficult to be sensitive to people who aren't sensitive. And the golden rule, do unto others as you want done unto you, that just doesn't apply, right? Like when somebody mistreats you, that's like out the door, and all of a sudden you're into the iron rule. The iron rule takes over, which is, I'm going to do to you what you have done to me. Or I'm going to do to you, as you are doing right now to me in this case. And here's what happens, when we do that. Getting even just makes things worse. We discovered that last weekend, because we've all done this. We've discovered that getting even actually makes us even with someone that we don't even like. And so kind of the question we're asking in this series is, what do we do about this? All right, what do we do about the mean people in our lives? And the other thing that kind of, we talked about last weekend is you can't ignore these people, right? It just doesn't work. You try to ignore them, and they just chip. They just keep pecking away. They just keep, eventually, you explode. I've exploded at times, and, I react, and then all of a sudden it's like I gave them more power, and it's like they have control over me. So we know that doesn't work. And so there's actually a third option, and this third option is the one we're going to spend some time talking about today. It actually is the one that takes some of their power away. It actually positions us to where our frustration doesn't just spill over into everybody else's lives. And this is something that Jesus modeled and he taught. In fact, he is kind of the ultimate model on this, but Abigail modeled it as well. And so Abigail is a woman in the Old Testament. She's a character midway through the Old Testament that, many people don't know about. And she's sort of the backstory to part of the story about David. Now, many of us have heard about David, and some of us have heard about the story of King David. You may have heard him as king. Others of us, you maybe remember him as shepherd boy David. But this part of the story takes place when he was fugitive David. All right, and so, when he was younger, when he was a teenager, he basically had this slingshot, and he felt led to go out into this valley and kind of take down this giant that was intimidating him and his whole tribe, and he did that, and because he killed this giant with a little stone and a slingshot, he became like a national hero. And so King Saul, who was the current king at the time, he noticed this, and he said, "Oh, I want to bring you in close," and he actually brought him into his family. And, because now David has like some influence with the Israelite people. And so, and King Saul is like smart enough to know that, hey, I want to keep my friends close, but I want to keep my rivals even closer. And eventually, King Saul gets word that there was this rogue prophet by the name of Samuel who, when David was a younger boy, Samuel went to his house and actually anointed him as the next king of the nation of Israel. And this was kind of a problem for the current king because he's like, well, that's going to interrupt my kingdom. And he wanted his son to become king. And so his dynasty is now in jeopardy. And so basically, Saul goes out and tries to kill David. And David escapes, and so now David is on the run, and this makes him a fugitive. So now he's fugitive David, and while he's like out on the run, living in the wilderness, he starts gathering all these other kind of leaders and people who are also on the run and are also fugitives of the king, and he's a natural leader, so they just gravitate to him. And so he, before long, has like 600 men that have become a part of this group called David's Merry Men. And plus like their children and their wives and women. And so like a large group, he's got this small army, but he's still a fugitive to King Saul. And he's angry because he's been mistreated, and he's angry about his circumstances. And so David has all this anger that's just pent up, and this anger goes with him everywhere he goes. I don't know if you've ever experienced someone like that. Like everywhere they go, like their anger is just spewing out at everyone. And so he can't take it out on King Saul, though. And so this kind of brings us to the point in the story where we meet Abigail. And so I want to kind of catch you up on this story, and then we're going to continue from there and kind of, let's see right here how the story begins. This is in 1 Samuel 25. So it says, and Samuel's kind of the biographer of David's life, by the way. So it says, a certain man in Moab who had property there in Carmel was very wealthy, and he had 3,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal. And so this was sheep shearing season, and the big thing about that was this is when everybody just found out, how much more wealthy they were. They got their profit report. When you had your sheep sheared, you discovered how big your herd had grown. And so it says this man's name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. And she was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband was harsh and mean in his dealings. And so David hears that Nabal, he's going in to shear sheep, and he realizes he's going to find out he's richer. And so David sends 10 of his men to Carmel with a message. And basically he says to Nabal, he says, hey, would you mind sharing your profit with us when you find out how much wealthier you've become? And you might go, okay, well, why would David feel like he had the right to ask that question? Well, he tells us in the message that he sends to Nabal. He says, when your shepherds were with us out in the fields for months and months and months, he says that he did not mistreat them. He says, when your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them. And the whole time they were in Carmel, nothing of theirs went missing. In other words, our men could have taken whatever they wanted to take. All right, they could have taken your women, your wives, your children. They could have taken your sheep, but none of that went missing. All right, I mean, you can talk to them and find this out. In other words, he's like, your profit. I mean, you profited during this season, and it's partly due to us. I mean, we're the ones that protected you, and so that's the reason David felt like he could ask for part of the profit that he had made. But Nabal's response, I mean, he was just rude and mean. He laughed at David. He's like, who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? But see, he knew who David was. He actually knew who he was. But he's like, who's this guy think he is? I didn't ask him to do this. He's like, nobody asked him to do this. This guy's an outlaw. He's running from the king. He's an outlaw from the king. I don't know who he thinks he is. I mean, we didn't need his help. We could have done this on our own. Nobody asked you, David, for anything. I don't owe this guy anything. That's the message. Go back and take that to the king. And so David's men, it says, turned around and went back. But when they arrived, they reported every word of that message back to David. And if you're here last week and you heard David's response, which is right here, he goes way over the top. It says, David said to his men, each of you strap on your sword. So they did, and David strapped on his as well. About 400 men went up with David. Now, as we said last time, this was like an overreaction of epic proportion right here. All right, there's going to be a massacre, and as David's riding along and he's headed, in Nabal's direction, I mean, just like many of us do, he's beginning to build up a head of steam. He's beginning to justify why he's going to do what he's going to do. And he's not 100% sure that this is the right thing to do, but he's trying to convince himself, no, this is what I should do based on how I got treated right here. I don't know if you've ever done that or not. You don't have to raise your hand, but we've all probably done that at some point. And so he builds up this head of steam, and he basically is like, it's been useless. He's just kind of muttering, it's been useless. This is just ridiculous. All my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness so that nothing of his was missing. In other words, all that I've done for him. I mean, we spent so many sleepless nights protecting his herds. I mean, all the ways we could have taken advantage of them, and we didn't. And what has he done for me? You know what he's done for me? He has paid me back evil for evil. That's what he's done. And then he brings God into the equation. He says, may God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive even one male of all who belong to him. He's basically like, hey, I'm going to go in and we are going to annihilate Nabal. We're going to annihilate his family. We're going to take all his servants out. He says, nobody treats me this way and lives. He's going to pay for it. And you read this story and you're like, oh, okay, seriously, David, is this really where we need to be going, right? Can we just put the pause button? But if you know anything about David, and if you know anything about how he acts and behaves, you know this is exactly why this is happening this way. So he's riding along, he's powering up, he's about ready to trade evil for evil with King Saul, but King Saul is untouchable, and so he's found someone else that he can take his anger out on. And that's pretty much where we left off last time. So let's continue the story here. All right, in the meantime, while this is all taking place, it says one of his servants told Abigail, that Nabal's wife, David sent messengers. And they're like, hey, Abigail, you weren't here. You didn't know this happened. This was Nabal's wife. I know it probably would have gone different if you would have been here. But David sent messengers from the wilderness to give our master his greetings. But our master, he hurled insults at them. I mean, he was so mean to them. Yet these men who came to us, they were good to us. They did not mistreat us. And the whole time we were out in the fields near them, nothing was missing. Now, this is fascinating. He goes on, he says night and day. He says night and day. He says, they were like a wall around us. Nobody could touch us. We were herding our sheep near them. Now think it over. See what you can do. He's speaking to Nabal's wife right here. He says, see what you can do because I think disaster is hanging over us. I mean, this servant has realized, man, things are not good. Our master and his whole household, we're going to get annihilated. And then I think he probably quiets his voice right here because I don't think he would have said this very loud. He's like, he is such a wicked man. No one can talk to him. But it says Abigail acted quickly. Now, here's what Abigail does. This is so fascinating right here. She assembles a caravan of food donkeys, all right? Now, you've probably heard of food trucks, right? Anybody heard of food trucks? Yeah, food trucks, right? This food truck, yeah. Now, here's a food donkey. This is the first century food truck right here. It's a food truck. It's an ancient food truck. And what she does, how about the graphics team right there? Food donkeys, how about that? Let's give a round of applause to the graphics team. Yeah, so she loads these food donkeys up with like probably 1,000 loaves of bread, figs, cake, wine. She knows she has about 400 of David's merry men's mouths to feed right here. And it says this, it says, she told her servants, this is brilliant right here. She told her servants, go on ahead, I'll follow you. But she did not tell her husband what she was up to. Meanwhile, while this is happening, David comes out of the mountain. And with David are 400 of his warriors, his merry men, and they are ready for battle. And he's just muttering to himself. He's building his head of steam. He's trying to justify why he's about to do what he's about to do, even though he's not 100% sure this is the right thing. But he's like, I'm going to do this. And he walks out of this ravine out into the open plain. And what does he see when he gets out in the open? He sees a caravan full of food items. And in the front of this caravan is this beautiful woman. And it totally messes with his mood. Like totally messes with it. I don't know if you've ever had this happen before, where you've got like your speech perfectly planned out. You're going to go let somebody have it. And then something happens and somebody does something kind for you. And you're like, oh man, I was all ready. I was perfectly mad. I was ready to like unload on them. And this caravan of food ruins it for him right here. In fact, here's what it says next. It says, when Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David with her face to the ground. Now this is again brilliant right here. She begins to speak to David, and she talks about the man that she believes that and hopes that he's going to become, that he has not become yet. All right, she actually forecasts the future right here. She talks about this person, almost like it's already happened, but David hasn't become this person yet. All right, it says that she fell at his feet and said, pardon your servant, my Lord. Let me speak to you. In other words, just give me a moment. Let me share what's going on right here and hear what your servant has to say. Please pay no attention, my Lord. She's speaking to David, to my husband Nabal. All right, that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name literally means folly, fool. Folly goes with him. She's like, David, you're not wrong about my husband. He is a mean man. You've got that right. But as for me, your servant, I did not see the men when they came to our house. I didn't see them. Those 10, messengers you sent, if I would have been there, perhaps I could have persuaded them, but I didn't even know about that. That's not my fault that my husband was so mean to them. But then here's what she does next. This is so powerful. She says, and now, my Lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives and as you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands. And David's like, he did? And she's like, oh, yeah, he did. That's what he did. All right. In other words, David, you're not the kind of person who's going to avenge like helpless, defenseless people, right? You're not going to attack anybody that's defenseless, are you? See, she's giving him credit for something that he's not yet become. All right. He's ready to annihilate them. She's like, well, you wouldn't be that kind of person. I know you're a better person than that. I know you are. He's like, oh, I didn't know I was that kind of person. And she says, and let this gift, this food caravan, let this gift which your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the men who follow you, the 400 warriors you just brought up. Again, this completely ruins his plan right here. How do you justify slaughter and pillage when you have somebody ready basically to give you the very thing you're going to steal? She said, the Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord because you, David, you fight the Lord's battles. He's like, I do? She's like, you do? Oh, you do? David, you fight the Lord's battles, all right? You don't fight your own battles, David. No, you're fighting the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. And he's like, it won't? And she's like, oh, no, because you're not going to do what you think you're going to do. She's trying to forecast the person she wants him to become. She goes on, she says, even though, and she's referring to Saul right here. All right, everybody in the region would have known what was going on between David and Saul. All right, everybody would have known David was a fugitive running from the law. Even though someone, meaning Saul, is pursuing you to take your life, the Lord will, and she uses some Hebrew imagery right here, some interesting imagery. The life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. And you're like, what in the world does that mean? Here's what she's saying right here. She's saying, David, listen, somebody's trying to steal your life. We all know that. All right, but your life, think about this, your life is tucked away securely in your heavenly Father's wallet. Like that's where he holds you. All right, another way to think about it, your life is tucked away securely at the bottom of a lady's purse. All right, it's safe, man. Nobody's going to find it in there. It is safe and secure. And then this is my favorite part. This next part is just amazing because she takes David back to his 15-year-old self. All right, she takes David back to his 15-year-old self when he faced Goliath in the valley. Now, if you were here last time, we talked about how this sword that David is carrying around, you know whose sword that is? That's Goliath's sword. When David took this giant of a man, the Philistine, down with a little pebble and a slingshot, he actually took Goliath's sword. So he has Goliath's sword. I don't know if he's wearing it on his back. We don't know if it's on his mule, but Abigail sees it right here. And she says, but the lives of your enemies, he, God, will hurl away as from, and look at this right here, the pocket of a sling. She's like, David, remember God. David, just remember back. Remember how faithful God was to you in this moment. Remember when you went headstrong down into that valley after that big giant Goliath? Nobody thought you could win. I mean, you weren't a warrior. You didn't have a sword. You weren't ready for battle. I mean, all you were doing was what you felt like God had called you to do. And yet, do you remember how God defended you? Do you remember how God came through for you? David, you don't need to get even right here. David, you don't need to do evil for evil right here. Just remember, man, I don't know if there's anybody on the planet that could say that God is with you the way God is with you. And then she speaks into his future and she asks him a question. Again, this is a really good question. This is a question we asked last week. We asked this question quite a bit around here at Crosspoint. And she asks it kind of without knowing she's asking it. And so here's the question. She says, David, what story do you want to tell when this whole moment right here is nothing but a story that you tell? Meaning once we're a few years down the road, what story do you want to tell? Because right now, I mean, you're in a season in your life where you're fugitive David. But remember, you're anointed the next king of the nation of Israel. And God's not going to relent on that promise. He's going to be faithful to that promise. And so when you're the king, and when you look back at this season in your life, what story, David, do you want to tell? In fact, here's her words. Here's the way she put it. She said, when the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him and has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden or the needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. David, isn't that a better story? Don't you want to realize that in this season when, man, you just went way over the top and you weren't 100% sure this is what you should be doing, but you were full steam ahead on it, don't you want to know that you were able to take a step back? And it's in this moment that David comes to his senses because he's about to act out and get even with someone that he doesn't even like, but he's going to become like them. And it says, David said to Abigail, praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment. In other words, man, I didn't have a lot of good judgment right here, but Abigail, you had such good judgment. I'm so thankful God intersected what I was about to do, this decision I was about to make right here with you, and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. I have heard your words and granted your request. Man, I tell you what, at some point in our lives, we all need an Abigail in our life, right? We need somebody like that right there. We need somebody who can talk us down. We need somebody who can change the narrative. We all need an Abigail. And when she shows up or when he shows up, we have to be willing to listen. In fact, some of us, if we're honest, when we think about some of our biggest regrets in life, we could have probably been spared by those regrets and avoided those regrets if we just would have listened to the Abigails in our lives. Now, there's a bit more to this story, and at first I'm like, I don't know if we're going to get into the rest of the story because it gets a bit storybook, all right? It gets a little like, it's all wrapped up in a nice little bow. But I thought, no, we need to see how this story ends. So I want to. This is kind of how things went down back then. So I want to share with you the rest of the story. It says, when Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet like that of a king, meaning he's like, man, I'm wealthy. I got the wealth of a king. He is living it up. And it says he was in high spirits. He was so happy and he was very drunk. So she, meaning Abigail, told him nothing until daybreak. And so Abigail, she goes to him, but she's like, all right, I'm not gonna use this moment to be like, hey, you really owe me big. She waits until morning. And so it says, then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things, and his heart failed him when he realized just how close he had actually come to being executed and losing everything that he had. And it says he became like a stone. And about 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal down, and he died. And then here's the storybook ending. It says, and David sent word to Abigail asking her to become his wife. You're like, really? Are we going rom-com right here? Like, how did this turn into a rom-com? But that's how apparently it went back then. And what do you think she did next? It says, Abigail quickly got on a donkey and attended by her 5 female servants. She went with David's messengers and became his wife. All right? And they lived happily ever after, the story says. It actually didn't say that in the Bible, but that's how we like to think of it. Now, think about this for a moment. Here's what we have so far. Here's what we have. And this is so cool because this is where your life and my life intersects with this story. All right? We have 3 characters. We have 3 responses, and we have one hero. All right, we've got Nabal, David, and Abigail. And then we have someone trading evil for good. And then we have David trading evil for evil. But Abigail comes along and she trades good for evil. Now, as we've been getting to know Nabal a bit, we began to really see this guy's pretty maniacal. And David, he's about to act in this moment just like everybody would expect. He's going to be very, very predictable right here. But then Abigail comes along, and she's actually the one that's remarkable in this moment. And so these are our choices right here. Do we want to be maniacal, predictable, or do we want to be remarkable? Now, let me just say, if you're not a Jesus follower, all right, if you're here checking out faith, checking out Jesus, not sure about Jesus, man, we're so glad you're here, so excited you're here with us. Now, the cool thing is you get to choose which path you want to take. And this is such a cool story because I hope that you see the learnings in this moment right here, that you can go out from here and go, man, I can live. I mean, I can actually have a lot fewer regrets if I just take some lessons from this and put them into practice. And my life will be so much better. And so you get to choose, if you're not a person of faith. Now, if you are a Christian, if you are a Jesus follower, we're kind of only left with like one option right here, and it's remarkable, all right? It's remarkable. And, the reason that that's kind of our only option is twofold, all right? Number one, it's because you and I have actually been on the receiving end of remarkable. And then number two, Jesus calls us to model this kind of remarkable. Now, when we say remarkable, we're not necessarily referring to Abigail right here. We call it this thing called amazing grace, meaning while you and I were still sinners, Jesus did something on our behalf that we couldn't do for ourselves. He totally did something that we didn't deserve. It was absolutely undeserving, absolutely unexpected. It was very unpredictable, but it turned out remarkable. Jesus died on our behalf so that we could actually be reconnected with the Father. All right, and then as a result of that, this Jesus who did that for us, he says, I just don't want you to come and believe things about me. I don't want you to just believe in me. I actually want you to get up every single day, and I want you to follow me. I want you to emulate me. To which we go, okay, exactly what does that look like, Jesus? Well, he tells us. He says, well, number one, I want you to love your enemies. Right? To which we say, okay, does that mean tolerate and ignore? Like, what exactly does loving mean? I mean, he says, no. And then he goes on. He says, I want you to do good. I don't want you to just ignore. I don't want you to just not hurt people. He says, no, I actually want you to do good to those who hate you, To which we go, well, I thought doing good was just not hurting him or her back. I thought, not going out and cutting his tires while he was working in the manager's office. I thought that was doing good. All right? I thought not destroying the hotel room, because this guy had created so many problems for us and writing an email to customer service. I thought that was good on my behalf. He goes, no. I want you to do good to those who hate you, and I want you to go on and bless those who curse you. And then on top of that, I want you to pray for those. Get this, pray for those who mistreat you. And we step back and we go, seriously? You want me to pray for those who mistreat me? Does anybody do that today? I mean, listen, I don't even pray for people that are good to me. I mean, I'm going to pray for people that mistreat me. Jesus says, yeah, I want you to pray for people that mistreat you. I want you to pray for the mean people. He says, I want you to not do something to them. I actually want you to do something for them. Because, see, that's actually how you become not like them. And then there's a bonus. He says, because see, when you do for them what they don't deserve, and when you pray for them, and when you do good, even though it's so undeserving, you actually become like your Heavenly Father. And just in case you're wondering, your Heavenly Father was kind to the ungrateful and the wicked, which at one point was you and me. So, do you have any mean people in your life? We know the answer to that. We've all got mean people in our life. Parents, do your kids have mean people in their lives? I mean, I'm telling you, man, if somebody mistreats our kids, we're like, man, you just like took up issue with me, right? And so, what would it look like in those moments to do good in your circumstances with those who hate you? To do good with those who mistreat you, to exchange good for evil. As that moment in the hotel room when our family was, in the midst of this like unraveling and we were becoming mean, just like this manager had kind of been mean to us and we were tit for tat, back and forth. It was just deteriorating and we were frustrated, we were tired, we were in a room, we were waiting, we couldn't get our luggage out of the room, it's after midnight. And all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. And I flung that door open. When you just you don't have to say anything, but people can just tell you're pissed. It's like your just persona is like, what do you want? I ripped that door open, and there's this thin-framed, older Asian man that is standing at the door, and he says, I'm the building manager, and I'm here to help you. I heard you had an issue. I'm like, yes, we do. I started going into it. And he said, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sure this has been so frustrating. I said, you are exactly right. Let me tell you how frustrating it's been. And I go off again and kind of tell him how frustrating it is. And he's like, well, I'm sure this has ruined your evening with us. I'm like, can I tell you how it's ruined our evening with you here? And he looks at me, he's like, come on, let's go. We don't have time for this. Let's go get your luggage. And we start walking down the hallway toward our other room. It's 2 doors down. And he pulls out this tool that he slides between the door, and he's like, if I flip it up just right, I can fling the little thing, the little security latch back. And I said, where did you get that? Do they make these somewhere? He said, oh no, I invented this myself because this has happened a few times. I'm like, I knew it. I knew that I wasn't the only one. I knew that this hotel, this is the problem. And he says, no. He's like, it is a freak accident. It doesn't happen often at all, but he's like, we had to have a way to solve this. And as he's talking through that, he's like, we're just going to get your bags. And over the next 2 or 3 minutes, as he works to open that thing, his kindness just diffuses the moment. He was the Abigail. He was the Abigail. I wasn't the most kind to him. I'm going to be honest. I'm ashamed by that. I'm embarrassed by that. But I'm telling you, what he repaid to me? He repaid goodness in exchange for my meanness. And guess who we remember? He was the one that was remarkable. See, here's the crazy thing. The meaner they are, the brighter your light has the opportunity to shine. And I can tell you that from experience because I've been on the other side of it. I was on the other side of it in that moment. And I can tell you, it was remarkable. We're still talking about it today. We were sitting down with our kids, our family this past week, talking about this over the dinner table one night. And we were kind of going through the details of, being stuck and so on. And we were trying to piece those together. But when we got to this man who came and exchanged kindness for our meanness, everybody remembered him. And we were like, oh my gosh, that's what we all remembered. Because that's what was remarkable. He was the Abigail. Listen, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this story because I want to inspire you to see that this is what Jesus does for us. I mean, when you follow Jesus, I'm telling you, it's the best leader you will ever follow. When you do for others precisely what they do not deserve you to do, I'm going to tell you, it may not change anything in them, but it will do something for you. And in doing so, you're going to become like your Heavenly Father. Now, last time, I left you with 4 questions, and I want to leave you with those same 4 questions this time. And so these are some of our next steps this week. You can look at your connection card, and I want you to use these to kind of wrestle through whatever circumstance you're dealing with right now or whatever comes up this week. It's kind of your filter. And so question number 1 is, do you want to be even with someone whom you don't even like? To which we go, no, I don't want to be like them. So, we go to the second question. Would you rather be ahead? And you go, yes. Well, you can't get ahead if you treat them the same way. If you're even with them, you're just spiraling down to their level. So what does it look like for me to get ahead? And so this leads to the third question. What story do you want to tell? Whenever this is just a story that's being told, what kind of story do you want to tell? And then this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where, the change happens. This is the tension point right here, right? And this is our next step for this week. It's asking and wrestling through this question. What would it look like to return good for evil? Right? Whether or not you follow through on it or not, I mean, you get to decide that. But I think you owe it to yourself to at least ask the question. What would it look like to return good for evil? And even if you don't follow through on it, just ask the question. And let me tell you that your willingness to step into this, into that space, is a space that most people will never step into. And yet in that moment, I'm going to tell you, when you do, there's going to be something that just takes hold in you. And you're also going to create a moment that's going to be talked about, likely for the rest of your life, because it's remarkable. So that's the challenge. That's what Jesus leads us to. I want to invite you to go ahead and stand with me. I want to pray for us before we wrap up here. Heavenly Father, it is so easy to stand up here and talk about it. So much harder to walk off the stage, take off my mic, walk out of this place and go live this out in the world. But this is what you've called us to let our light shine in such a way that people wouldn't see our belief system, and they wouldn't see, hey, you go to church, they wouldn't see our church attendance. But to let our light shine in such a way that they would actually see our good works, and they would see the connection between what we do and what we believe and who we follow. And so, God, I just pray that you'd help us to know what to do. Give us the courage, God, as we wrestle through scenarios with people, difficult people, mean people this week. Help us. Give us the strength, the courage to repay good for evil. Because you've done the same to us. And we know that when you're on the other side of that, it's actually remarkable.
So It's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I'll give you everything. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Sing with me. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I'll give you everything. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. All right, let's keep those hands going. We're going to sing one more song.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb when I met you.
You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. And your freedom is all that I know. The old me knew Jesus when I met you. When you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day.
I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I
glad that you joined us today. And just like that song is for so many of us, our story, that's what we get to do this week. You get to decide what story your life will tell, a predictable story or a remarkable one. And I want you to know, I can tell you from personal experience that when we follow Jesus on this, it will make your life and your relationships so much better. We're cheering you on, praying for you this week as you navigate the difficult relationships, the mean people in your life. Now, if you'd like us to pray for you this week, perhaps you've got something going on or just need some encouragement, text the keyword "need prayer" to 317-834-7373, and one of our prayer team volunteers will be in touch with you today. If you're a giver here at Crosspoint, thank you for your generosity to the Joy Box. Crosspoint is completely donor funded. That means every amount of money you give helps spread this message that you've heard today, helps people understand more about who Jesus is and what he wants for their lives. If you're not a giver but you'd like to become one, you can donate at this QR code through the Give button. And just know that when you donate, your generosity is what's writing amazing stories in people's lives, helping them experience all the goodness, joy, and hope that comes out of this place. So thanks so much. Thanks for joining us today. We can't wait to see you next time for a special online-only weekend as we kick off our new series, Spark.
When I was broken, you were my healing. Now you're